Hi, this is Rabbi Izzy, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to do a quick introduction to the Talmud for our Talmud study group and just give you a little bit of the background on it if you're not familiar with it. The word Talmud means learning. The Talmud is quite often referred to as the Shas, which is an abbreviation of the word Shisha Sedarim, which means the six orders of the Talmud. The Talmud is made up of a number of tractates, and the tractates are grouped into these six different orders. We'll talk about more of that in a minute. The Talmud is comprised of two pieces. There's the Mishnah, which came first, and then the later Gemara. The Mishnah, which means repetition, is a compilation of the teachings of the Tanaim. These are the early rabbis, and these teachings were redacted by Judah HaNasi sometime in the 3rd century, out of concern that this would be lost after the great cataclysms that had occurred in Israel in that time, including the destruction of the temple and the death and enslavement of many Jews. The Mishnah is written in Rabbinic Hebrew, and it's written in a very compact form to be easily memorized, but because of that, it doesn't have a lot of depth of explanation, and hence why the Gemara came about. It is quite possible that there were some existing documents that they used as well. Scholars differ on their opinions on this, but it's possible that there were some of these lecture notes extant at the time. There is another document that you might hear about that's called the Tosefta, and this is very similar in many ways to the Mishnah, almost word for word, but then in other places it varies quite a bit. But this is an example of another text that was produced out of this same period of time. The Gemara was composed from the years 200 to 600 of the current era. It is written in Aramaic, not Rabbinic Hebrew, and except when it's quoting scripture. When it's quoting scripture, it's actually the scripture is quoted in biblical Hebrew. And this was written by what the rabbis who are referred to as the Amoraim, which means those who speak. And these were the ones that came after the earlier rabbis, the Tanaim. We also have in the Gemara that sometimes they will bring in, so that the Gemara, I didn't talk about this, is really it's an attempt to expand upon the Mishnah, and it asks questions of the Mishnah. And so in the Talmud, you'll have a small bit of Mishnah, and then you can have pages and pages of Gemara where they're trying to unpack what is written in the Mishnah. And sometimes they'll even pull in these teachings by the Tanaim that did not make its way into the Mishnah at all. And this is called a baraita, or in plural, baraitot. They'll bring in and say, Rabbi so-and-so said this, and it's viewed as having the same weight as the rabbis who speak in the Mishnah because it's from an authoritative rabbi. So they'll bring those into the argument. And so you'll see those there as well. So as I said, the Talmud is called the Shas as well. This Shisha Sedarim, these 6 different orders, and they are comprised of different tractates for a total of 63 tractates. Sometimes the count's slightly different, but in general, that's the case. The first order is Zeraim, seeds, and this deals with agriculture law, and there's 11 tractates to that. Then you have Moed, laws around the festivals, and there's 12 tractates of that. Nashim, laws around women, and there's 7. Nezikim, damages, this is civil law, and there's 10 tractates of that. Kodashim, holy things, these are laws around the temple, and there's 11 tractates to that. And then finally, the 6th one is Tohorot, which means purities, and there's 12 tractates of that, all totaling up to 63 total. The Talmud contains Jewish law, of course, halakha, but it also quite often includes agada, stories. Stories will be told to illuminate a point, or sometimes they're just recorded in there. They're connected to the discussion that's currently going on. The other thing about the Talmud is that quite often there's no final conclusion to a point. It's just argued and dropped and left there to be as it is. And part of this is because the idea is that it's the journey is the most important part, not the end. It's really meant to teach how to think rationally, how to think like a rabbi, and how to wrestle and engage with these things. And because of that, there were a few attempts in the Middle Ages. One of them was by the famous Rambam, Maimonides, to codify the Talmud and make it easier to look up and see what the proper mitzvah is. But these at the time were met with great resistance because of this fact, that it's really more about the studying of it and the learning of it. And that is what is important. When I first started studying Talmud, one of the things that I did not expect, and it's actually the most, in my opinion, beautiful aspect of Talmud study and what I enjoy the most, is that I found myself sucked into the argument, brought into the conversation. And as you study with a group of people or a study partner, you quite often find yourselves taking different sides and being part of the argument, and that's just like a wonderful thing. It just really makes the whole text come alive and feel like you're part of this conversation that has been going on for centuries as well. Another thing I might want to note is that in the Talmud, quite often it looks like these rabbis are debating with one another, but if you look them up, you'll realize that some of them quite often lived hundreds of years apart. And so it's construction of arguments meant to say, kind of like, if Rabbi so-and-so was around, here's what he would have said on this topic, or here's what he did say, and here's what another rabbi said, and then they bring them together and try to work through the differences. But this is a way of wrestling and teasing out the meaning of the Mishnah and so forth. So it's easy to assume that these people were contemporaneous when quite often they were not. So just to give you a quick, very high-level idea, here is a page of Talmud. And what we have here is the center column is the text of the Mishnah and the Gemara. You'll have the Mishnah at the top. And then, like I said, the Gemara can go on for pages and pages. The other two main columns is over here on the right is the text of Rashi. Rashi was a very prominent rabbi who lived around the year 1000 in northern France. And he wrote a commentary on the Talmud. And then in this column over here, this major column here, is called the Tosafot. And these are the rabbis who came after Rashi. It's his children, grandchildren, and disciples and so forth. And they wrote commentary here. But then you do have other commentaries around here that come later and later, sometimes even up into the modern era. But those are sort of the main sections of it. Also, I wanted to note that there are two versions of the Talmud. There is the Bavli, which is what we will be studying and what most people study. This is the Babylonian Talmud, and it's the most comprehensive and fullest version. And but there's also the Palestinian Talmud, which is called the Yerushalmi, something that I quoted in my Union article this past week. This is the Talmud that was put together in the land of Israel, and not at the great academies, Talmudic academies in Babylon. It is shorter and less complete, and generally is studied more by scholars rather than rabbis or rabbinical students. So anyway, that's just to give you a quick idea of what the Talmud is and what it's all about, and look forward to meeting with you all and diving into this this coming week. Have a great week. Bye.